Back in the day when I was at St. Augustine Seminary, studying to be a priest, every year during Christmas we had these Christmas parties, and basically every year we had to do these skits. And so for my year, I would write the script, and then they would act, and I would direct the whole thing. And we did that again year after year. So one year we got tired of it, and I didn't want to write a screenplay or a script, and they didn't want to act, so we did something different. And so we did a video. I don't have the video, so don't ask me for it afterwards, but there's a video where basically we interviewed all the people in our year, and also faculty members too. And I remember this video because I interviewed one of the faculty members who was a priest, and I asked him for advice. You have any advice for guys who are about to leave the seminary, get ordained, and become priests themselves? And he said very cryptically, my advice is, don't turn a spiritual life into a concentration camp. To which I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, that's all I'm going to say about that. Now, years have passed, and obviously that's still in the back of my mind. He never actually explained to me what he meant. So I had to think about it, and I was thinking about it in advance of this weekend, right? So I think he meant like one of two things, if not both. First of all, we tend to just pack our days and our lives with just like too much stuff. We tend to forget only the Lord's yoke is easy, only his burden is light. But the second thing is we tend to make up stuff. We tend to make up our own program for the spiritual life. This is the way I'm called to be holy. We rationalize it by saying it's God's will because it has a Catholic vibe to it, but if we break it down, it falls just short of God's particular will for our lives. There's habits and structures and routines that make us feel safe, which make life predictable, but again, falls just short of God's particular will for my life. So a way to kind of further expound upon this is to look at today's gospel. Gospel of Matthew chapter 1, the parable of the Wicked Tenants. Pretty simple story. There's a landowner, has a vineyard, invites people, tenants, to work in his vineyard, and he goes away. And when the produce time comes, he sends people to check up on the tenants. Different sets of servants. Eventually he sends his son. These people are mistreated, they're beaten, the son is killed, and the story basically ends. And so it kind of begs the question, what's the point of the parable? The key to unpacking the parable of the wicked tenants is to focus on the interior disposition of the tenants. The way I like to frame it in the back of my mind is, what do they like and what do they hate? Or perhaps more accurately, what do they love and what do they hate? The thing that they love, perhaps surprisingly, is the vineyard. They love the vineyard. It's a first-class vineyard. Why not love it? It's got the tower and the wine press, the hedge, a nice fence. They love the vineyard. They love working in the vineyard. They have no issue with the vineyard. The only thing they hate, the only thing they massively dislike is the fact that the vineyard has a master. It's the only thing they hate. And you transpose that to our modern context, right? So a lot of times we love the external trappings of religious practice. Maybe I like reading quotes about Catholic things on social media. Maybe I love being part of parish groups, attending parish events. But one thing I hate is being told what to do. I hate obedience. I hate humility. I hate deference. So you break it down, what do I love? I love religion. What do I hate? In a certain sense, I hate God. And the point of the parable is to show that that's a really common thing, actually. Now, I want to give you a couple of practical examples just to flesh this thing out. So one involves a pastoral example. I'll change the details to protect the innocent, but this person doesn't go to this parish, so we can safely talk behind this person's back, right? But basically the idea is this person was lamenting the fact that, gosh, I can't participate in parish events and parish groups because I got to take care of my husband who's like sick at home, right? Obviously, I don't want to make light of that, right? So that's obviously a really painful thing, and no one wants to be in that situation. But my point, though, is that if you find yourself in any situation like that or something similar to that, where I'm in a situation which doesn't coincide with my interests, maybe it doesn't kind of coincide with my gifts and talents, like I don't want to be here, I find it's uncomfortable and painful, but when I pray into it, it's my duty to be here, that's the thing that's going to make you holy. That's the thing that's going to make other people holy, especially the people you're called to serve in the context of that particular moment. Another example comes from my own life. So, as you probably know, my mom is my favorite person in the entire world. And my father actually died of liver cancer in 1996. And that moment changed our family. And it made my mom great. In the aftermath of my father's death, she became this person of incredible virtue and tremendous character. And it was immensely helpful to our family and to me. And we talked about this. And I was saying to my mom, obviously it'd be great if Dad were here, right? But at the same time, I'm very grateful, Mom, that you didn't back away from the moment. And you rose to the occasion in the aftermath of Dad's death. Like you let the moment, even though it was painful, change you and stretch you and push you to become the person that God was ultimately calling you to be. And perhaps selfishly, I want to tell you that I needed that. Like I needed all of that. I needed you to become all those things. Everything you would eventually become, I needed all of that. As a person, as a man, and as a priest. And if you had backed away from becoming the person you would ultimately become because you were afraid, because you lacked generosity, because of whatever, that would have been bad. Not just for me, but for the people I would serve in the context of parishes. So, on behalf of the people of God, thank you. One final note on with this. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, Restore the Glory, with Dr. Bob Schuchts and Jake Khym. And as a prelude to the actual episode, Jake Khym was talking to their guest, who was Christopher West. And so basically, Jake Khym began the episode just thanking Christopher West, saying to Christopher West, like, look, if you hadn't journeyed with me into all those dark places, I probably wouldn't be married. I probably wouldn't have 2 of my 3 kids. And so on behalf of my family, like, thank you. In response, Christopher West, like, he was very gracious, so, he acknowledged what Jake was saying, gave the glory to God. But in turn, he told him his own story. So he said, basically, look, back in the day, I knew this priest. He was a Monsignor. And the way I would describe him, he was the most free person I'd ever met in my entire life. And journeying with this guy, he taught me many things. Taught me to be free, taught me to participate more fully in the Christian thing, to be full of life. And for that, I was full of gratitude. And it really changed, obviously, the way I do ministry. And later on, when this priest got older and he was dying, he went to this priest at his deathbed and was talking to him. And he wanted to tell this priest all these different things that, the priest had done for him, all these different ways in which this priest had changed his life. But in response, this elderly priest, all he said was, well, that's just the way it goes. And I love that story because it ties in all these things we're talking about today. Like, there's a really recurring temptation for all of us to just play it safe. Just play it safe, keep things predictable. Various habits and structures and routines where I don't have to be pushed, I don't need to be stretched, I don't need to change. Maybe it has a Catholic and spiritual vibe, so I can say it's God's will, except it's really not. But when you do that, even if no one else notices, like, that's really bad. Whereas in contrast, if you correspond to the cross, which is not doing the most difficult thing, but dying to your own will, to do the will of God. That's what the cross is. That's the thing which is salvific. That's the only thing which transforms people and human beings on a deep level, on a heart level. And we need that. Because when you correspond to the cross, what happens, eventually in time, you become spiritual fathers and mothers. And you encounter other people, and they change, and hopefully they become the persons that God is calling them to be, and they in turn become spiritual fathers and mothers, and they change other people in turn. And that's how you change the world. Now you may hear that and think, well, gosh, that sounds too easy. That sounds too easy to be true. But apparently, that's just the way it goes.